Welcome to an early morning version of the Afterword. It's not early morning for most people, but it feels early morning a little bit to me.
Yeah, you got like the
what do I have?
The sexy, groggy voice.
This is the Afterword. We are going to explore the passage that was preached yesterday, see some more layers there and some more application, I think, as well as consider where do we see God's glory in this passage. Every passage will show us God's glory of some sort where we learn about God. So I want to start here, though, to warm us up. I'm first of all, I'm joined by Vince, Kirsten, Betty, and I'm joined by myself, too, I guess. So that's four of us. Here, this is going to be rough. This is going to be rough today.
Joined by yourself. I'm glad that you brought yourself along with yourself.
Sometimes I don't.
I feel like you should talk about yourself. I always get this wrong. Is it first person? And Eric Reeves is here, too.
Yeah, and Eric's here. This feels kind of weird, but yes, Eric's here. My name's Eric. All right, here's the question. It was submitted to me yesterday in person by our listener, and the question is this. What new hobby or activity did you pick up during the quarantine?
I don't think I picked up anything new. There were a few temporary habits or things that we did during quarantine. I dreaded Vince's hair during quarantine. That was new, but that was a short season. Didn't feel short, but it was it was a short season. Our boys wanted to put the trampoline in the ground, and so they dug a hole and buried the trampoline, but my only rule was if you start, you have to finish. So, but that was a short season, and I didn't really participate in that other than laying down the law. I think every Friday night we made a giant, a giant cookie, but in a cast iron skillet, and would just spend the week, thanking, everybody taking turns thanking God for what he had done that week, because it was a hard season to find things to celebrate. So it was kind of an intentional celebration and Sabbath. But that was only during quarantine. We haven't continued that.
We should bring that back, though. That cookie was good.
Was it always a different kind of cookie?
No, it was just a giant chocolate chip cookie in a cast iron skillet. And we would just pull it out of the oven and give everybody a fork, and we'd just all sit around the cast iron skillet and eat it. And sometimes we'd put a big scoop of ice cream on it, but there was no there was sharing germs when you weren't supposed to share germs. But
you were quarantined.
It was family.
It's all right.
Maybe you should do a giant oatmeal raisin cookie.
That'd be good. Betty and I discovered last night
that does not sound good.
That she and our favorite cookie is oatmeal raisin.
Raisin?
It's God's candy, Eric. Come on.
Nature's candy.
There's nothing worse than biting into a cookie you think it's chocolate chip and it turns out to be raisins.
Nothing worse?
Well,
I could think of a couple right now, just immediately.
In the cookie world. All right, no, I support you in that decision. I mean, you can have that. You can have wrong opinions.
I do love oatmeal cookie dough.
Oh.
Just the dough.
Yeah, there's some substance to that with the oatmeal in there.
Delicious.
Uh-huh.
I used to eat the frozen dough when I worked at a YMCA. We used to go into the freezer and cry and eat the frozen cookie dough.
Cry?
Why were you crying?
Well, it was a terrible job, but...
Okay, back on topic. What hobby did you pick up during the quarantine? Vince, anything different than what Kirsten shared?
I started turning wood. So I got
That was during the quarantine you started doing that?
I don't remember.
So.
Ish.
Somewhere in there?
Yeah. Started turning wood, and that became a thing.
Can you explain what turning wood is?
So if you've ever seen a wooden bowl or something like that, it was, so you put it in put a big chunk of wood in a machine. It spins at 3,000 RPMs, and you foolishly put a sharp tool toward it as it spins towards you.
And chunks probably just fly.
Yeah.
I mean, Vince wears a full face shield, a heavy leather apron, gloves. He's all decked out.
You want to get impaled by a
I have. So that's why I have the other things. Yeah. Not impaled, but it'll shoot across the room. Anyway, that. I also took up, I don't know when all this started. It's all the last several years that were a blur, but yeah, trail running. But I think that was post quarantine. The end. I mean, we could go into other things. Like I picked up the habit of being really cynical toward people, wanting to be more isolated than I already was. a lot of the bad habits. Also.
Enjoying quarantine.
I didn't start smoking.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about that one.
About starting?
Yeah, just kind of, yeah. I think it'd be cool just to have, like, always have a pack of smokes on me.
Rolled up in your shirt sleeve.
Yeah, and then I always, like, pack them down. You know how you...
You think that would be cool?
You
Yeah.
could always have one and just not smoke.
And I'm going to roll it up in my white T-shirt sleeve.
I'm
Like
going
the
to
fawns.
awkwardly move over to Betty now. Betty, what did you pick up?
I feel
Anything
like
new?
quarantine was when I started to try to run, but it's just been a constant trying to pick that up since then. And then this wasn't new, but maybe it was like re-sparking an old hobby. I read a lot during quarantine. This could be controversial. I read the whole Harry Potter series in like a month or so.
That's witchcraft.
Yep.
That's tomfoolery. That's wizardry.
I'll edit that out.
That was really controversial.
Vin-
Yeah, you
Vince read it to the boys too, so he's with you in the witchcraft.
But we did a Bible study about how we could see Jesus and Harry.
You
Not
know,
really.
I
Not really.
didn't. I also got a new sister-in-law in quarantine, kind of. They
Kind of.
got engaged during quarantine, got married like August that year. So it's like still kind of in that window.
Yeah.
That's not a hobby, but that's exciting.
That'd be a weird hobby. If your hobby was getting
Getting
sister-in-laws.
sister-in-laws. Well, that'd be more weird for my
Sisters-in-law?
brother, maybe,
Sister-in-laws.
than me.
What about you, Eric?
I don't know if I picked up anything new, actually.
You said earlier this is a good question.
It's a good question.
But you
for
don't
other
ever have an
people.
answer.
I spent a lot of time sitting outside, but I already do that.
Yeah.
We started
Boring.
paddleboarding in there somewhere, but I don't think it was because of the quarantine. So that's exciting. I'm going to keep moving. Oh, man, this is a hard one today.
You need your sugary coffee drink.
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
haven't had that
sugary
yet.
Coffee drink, you're right. Let's move to the summary. Vince, give us a summary of 1 Samuel chapter 8.
All right. Samuel is old. That's how it starts.
He was told that, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was told that, but it also is said that by the narrator. He's become old. He's got 2 sons who have taken over the judgeship, the judgery, and they are not walking in the ways of Samuel, so they haven't followed his character and his integrity. It's interesting that that's in there, because in chapter 8 it doesn't really. That part doesn't really play out through the chapter. It's just the intro to it, which gives rise to, I think, the people looking for, okay, we need something else. Samuel, you're old. Your boys aren't going to cut it for us, and so we need someone to lead us. So they ask for a king, like the other nations have. Samuel takes that word from them, goes to the Lord in prayer, and asks God, hey, what do we do here? And God turns to him, which is kind of shocking, because we would expect God to say, no, not if they want a king from like the other nations. But God turns and says, yep, obey what they're asking, do it. This is not just about you, Samuel. This is not against you. This is about me and them rejecting me. And this is the way they've been for centuries, all the way back to Egypt. And so he says, go ahead and tell them they can have a king, but you need to warn them about what's coming. And so Samuel spends, 10 verses 10 through 18 telling them all of the things that this king will take. Over and over, he tells them all the things the king will take from them. And certainly there were other parts of what a king would do. I mean, they're probably good things, but those are the things he points out. This is what the king will take from you. If this is really what you want, this is what you're stepping into. And I think, I'm inserting my own opinion here. I think probably he was assuming they would come back from that and say, okay, that's not what we want. If that's how it's going to be, that's not what we want. But verse 19 says the people refused to obey, and they said, nope, that's what we want. And so Samuel goes back to God, says, God, what do we do? And he says, appoint them a king. That's what they asked for. Go ahead and give it to them. And so Samuel says, all right, everybody go back to your own city. This is going to happen.
So I want to ask this question first. It sure seems like God had one plan, the people rebel, and then he goes with a different plan because of what they wanted. That God wanted to be their king, and so they would not have a personal king, another person who's the king. People say, no, we don't want that for a bunch of bad reasons. And then God says, okay, I give in. You guys can have a personal king. What is wrong with that way of reading this text?
Well, it doesn't take into account what we know from other parts in Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Deuteronomy. Did you write it down? Deuteronomy. I don't
From
have
yesterday?
it. Yeah.
17, 14 to 15.
Yeah, Deuteronomy 17, 14 through 15, where the people are in the wilderness and God's laying out the law to Moses. Moses is communicating that back to the people. And part of it says, when you get to the land that I've promised you, through all of your journeys and all of your witnessing what the other pagan nations have, you're going to get to your new land and you're going to want a king. It's going to happen. You're going to want a king. And so we have a God says, I have a plan in place for that. And we will make that will happen. But there are parameters for what that king looks like. So God knew this was going to happen. It was a part of his plan. Now we fast forward, years and years, and we get to this place. And it does seem like, if we don't take into account what we see in the past, it does seem like the people request something from God, and he has to sort of change his plans around to get them what they want.
Yeah, but that's not what God's doing here.
Not at all.
So the people want something really, really badly. They're warned against what that thing will bring, and the people say, nope, we still want that thing really, really badly.
Yeah.
And so one of the big points that you made yesterday, Vince, was often we think we know what we want, but it may not be what is actually good for us. And so God may or may not provide it, or he may provide it, and it turns out that it is not all that we thought it was going to be, and that there might be some discipline involved with how God responds to us. I'm curious, because there is a sense of demanding here from the people. I'm curious, as we listened and read the text yesterday, if there were things that the Spirit was pushing on us personally that felt like, oh, maybe I am demanding something of God now. Did anything come to mind yesterday?
Nothing came to mind currently for me, but I know that in the past with things like my anxiety that I've shared with on the podcast, that I connected God's love for me with the removal of the anxiety. And when he didn't remove the anxiety, I felt very unloved by God. And so, and I've shared in hindsight now, I can see that God was accomplishing a lot of other things and not removing the anxiety. But I think because I expected him to do that for me and he didn't, it affected the way that I viewed him and the way that I thought that he loved me.
I haven't actually thought about it, Eric, in the way that you've asked it, but when you asked it, this came to mind. I'll try not to exaggerate here. I think almost every time I pray and ask God, have requests for God, I don't know if demand is the right word, but assume that I'm praying with I often assume I'm praying with the right motives, therefore God is going to give me the thing that I'm asking for. And so, it relates to what the people are going through here. I think probably they had in mind, this is good for us, and we're asking for the right thing. Samuel, you're old and your sons are evil. We need somebody. This is going to be good for us to step in. And so I think often I get to this place where I move toward prayer thinking, because I've thought through all of the things that go along with what I'm about to request from God. And I don't often request from God things that I don't feel like he ought to give me. As sinful as that sounds, I think that's probably where I go.
I think it's easy to have misplaced hope without realizing that we have misplaced hope. And so I remember when Solomon got sick, I was praying that God would heal him. And we thought God was healing him. And it got to a point that I had no category for God doing anything other than healing him, because there were a lot of things that seemed to be pointing to the fact that God was healing him. And then all of that stopped. And I was completely devastated. I was just crushed. And looking back, I think what I realized is that my hope had very subtly shifted from being a hope in the healer to being a hope in the healing. And that was a deadly shift for my faith, because I was looking for what God could do for me rather than looking to who God was. And so my hope was not in his character necessarily. It was in what I thought the outflow of his character should be. And so, I think in this passage, the Israelites they have a misplaced hope. They have their hope in a king. And I think they're tired of living by faith. And I think we also get there, that we get tired of living by faith. And so very, very subtly, our hope shifts into the things that God can provide rather than who he is.
It's way easier, it's way easier to hope in things that I can see, I can feel, I can hear from. I thought it was really profound yesterday. Vince, you pointed out that the job of Samuel is to point people to God ultimately, to give God glory, to point people to God. This is Samuel's response. We see he goes quickly to prayer, whereas they're asking for a king is putting the attention back upon themselves and what they want. They want a king to go out and fight for them and a king to do all these things for them. And so become very, very self-focused, consumed with themselves, which is then fascinating to me that God says, okay, all right, we're going to give you a king. Are there times in your life that you have experienced God giving you something that you really, really wanted, you thought was so good for you, only to turn out that the actual experience of that thing was not what you thought it was? That God said, okay, it's not what you think you're getting, but I'm going to give it to you.
Yes, my junior year, I guess I kind of end of sophomore year, I had the opportunity to be an intern for the NAVS ministry going into my junior year. And at that point in college, the only thing I wanted was to be on staff with NAVS and to I wanted to drop out of school and do it. I knew I wasn't going to do that, but I just really wanted to be on staff. And then that was the perfect opportunity to be able to do that as a student, and just really longed for it, was praying for it. It happened and worked out, and the Lord was gracious in providing the funds to do it as well. And throughout the year of doing it, I realized just it was not where I was supposed to be. I think it was beneficial in some ways and helping me to grow, but I think it really revealed I don't think I should have a role like this within the NAVS and within what, I don't know, just wrestlings I was having with the ministry and what that looked like. And I just, maybe it was good sort of at the time because it helped shape some of the things for the future, but I think in walking through it and realizing it, I don't think it was really a good fit. And just the demands I had for it, I don't know, I just think there was disappointment in it with how my heart handled the whole job and experience.
Thanks, Betty.
Yeah.
Other things come to mind?
I think it's not something that I desperately wanted, but I think for the majority of our marriage, we've lived often paycheck to paycheck. And so there hasn't always been a lot of savings. And so when we've needed a new couch or something like that, I always had to save for a long time. And so the couch was way past actually needing to be replaced. And several years ago, we had a season in life where, for some tax purposes and some other stuff, we had to buy stuff. And so I was able to just go out and purchase, some furniture and some things. And it was not at all fulfilling. And I think I had always thought, okay, I'm just so tired of always having to scrimp and save for things. And then when I didn't have to scrimp and save, it didn't actually... It wasn't any more fulfilling or didn't bring any more pleasure at all. And so I think it was a very gentle lesson from the Lord of a truth that I already knew, that these things are not actually going to satisfy or, bring any sort of fulfillment, that's only a place that the Lord can fill.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a specific example, but just a lot of things come to mind. That's one of them. We often want a thing, a toy or a new this or that thing. And I think we can begin to justify our desire for that thing. We need it. We deserve it, whatever that is. And once we get it, it's not too long before that thing has worn its course and it's not really that. now I'm not saying that God's the giver of that thing necessarily, but I think we see that all the time. There are times I think the thing that came to mind, I said this earlier, is we're all wired for relationship, and so much of the time the way that works out is we desire a connection and a relationship that would lead to marriage or something like that, and so we long for that. And there are times when that finally happens, and you realize, oh, this isn't actually the thing that's most fulfilling in my life, ultimately. So we see those things begin to crumble as well. And I give example after example of my life. It's not really answering your question, Eric. I think I'm a little tired too, but it's not answering your question. Those aren't things that God said, okay, you can have it. But they are good gifts. And if we believe God is the giver of good gifts, I think when Kirsten said this earlier about looking toward the healing and not the healer, when we look at the gift and see that as the ultimate gain and not the giver of the gift, I think that's when we begin to face places of dissatisfaction. I was talking to somebody last night who's walking through some really hard stuff. And they asked the question, which I think we've probably all wrestled with. I know I have in the last couple of years. The thing that I'm asking, they said, the thing that I'm asking for seems like something God would desire to answer. Seems like God would be about this in my life. And he just doesn't seem to be giving that. And that's really confusing. So I think the reverse is true too. There are things we ask for, maybe not demand, but we assume God will give that. Why would he not give that? And when it doesn't work out, we are confused. But there, I think the question again has to get to the place of saying, what was I searching for? Was I really searching for nearness to God, or was I searching for the thing that God could give me?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when nearness to God means pain and suffering and not getting
Can be, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. These Israelites, as you pointed out yesterday, Vince, are much like us. There's this underlying discontent, putting hope in something other than who God is, maybe something that God can give. So these are things that we can certainly identify with today, and I think wrestle with to deep degrees, especially when it comes to good things that we really think that we want that will fix something. Or
well, and I think the Israelites, they wanted a king to get them something. They wanted a king to get them something. Like, it was not just, it was not that they were discontent with God, but they were trying to find someone that would give them what they thought they could not get from God. And so it was viewing God as like insufficient. And so just the irony in that they were wanting a king to give them something that they thought God could not give them. And that discontent. And God warns them that a king is only going to take, and yet they're wanting a king for what they can get from that king.
Yeah. I don't know if I communicated this clearly enough yesterday, but just as a reminder for us as we think about this, because it's going to come up over and over again in the next several weeks, but God did have a plan for a king, but it wasn't an ultimate monarchy where that king ruled and reigned for the purpose of the fame of that king. God had a plan for a king who would consistently push the people back to seeing God as their God. And so when they come to Samuel and say, we want a king like the other nations have a king, this is why it's shocking that God would answer, okay. Because they're not saying we want a king like you've told us we should want a king who's going to continue to point us back to you. We want a king who's going to, you said this earlier, be for us. And so anyway, we need to keep that in mind, that God did have a plan in place for a king. The purpose of the king was that king would be pointing the people back to God. And we see examples of that. We'll see little glimpses of that in the kings who are coming.
And maybe some examples of not that.
And we'll see lots of examples of not that.
I thought it was ironic yesterday in 8:20, that we may also be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Mm-hmm. And I thought how ironic that was, that God had just fought a battle for them in the previous chapter, beating the Philistines. And they had gone through the entire thing with the ark and losing, and then God fought a battle for them and showed up, and yet they're discontent with that, and they want a king that's going to go fight their battles for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Samuel, he goes back to God. He's like, "This is what they're saying. This is me, but they're idiots. Like they don't know what they're asking for." And the Lord says again, "Obey their voice and make them a king." We pointed out, at least when we were talking about before we started recording, is that Samuel's response to the pressures of the people is very different than Eli's response when he was I don't know if pressure is the right word, but when he was called on some things. How is Samuel's response here different than Eli's?
I mean, Vince pointed out yesterday that Samuel goes to God immediately. He prays when he's confronted with things, when things are questioned. And then looking ahead a little bit, both Samuel and Eli had 2 sons. They were both wicked. They both put their sons in positions of leadership. But if you jump ahead to 12:2, Samuel's talking to the people, and it says, "Now behold, the king walks before you, and I am old and gray, and behold, my sons are with you." And so his sons have been removed, and they're a part of the assembly. And so I think what we see in Samuel is that wisdom is not only learning from your own mistakes, but it's also learning from the mistakes of others. And so somehow between 1 Samuel 8 and 1 Samuel 12, Samuel has removed his sons from leadership, and now they're just a part of the assembly of people.
And then keep going on that, Kirsten. You mentioned something about Joel being one of the sons.
Yeah, I was looking at genealogy, and if you look at the genealogy in 1 Chronicles 6, you see that Joel's son is actually appointed by David. His name is He-Man. And so for those of us from the 1980s who watched He-Man and the Castle of Grayskull, it's really... The counterpart was She-Ra. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you should Google it.
I wasn't allowed to watch that cartoon because he says something about the power of the universe or something, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And by the power of the universe and the Castle of Grayskull.
Yeah, and the castle. I have the power.
Oh man!
And he had that.
But he's like, I don't know. I was only a twinkle in my dad's eye at that time.
What was that? His cat, Cringer or whatever, and then the cat would like transform into a big tiger too.
There's
and
a cat?
He would ride it.
Oh, now that he's interested.
All right, keep moving.
Anyway, Joel had a son named He-Man.
No. Oh yeah, Joel did.
Yeah,
Yes,
Joel
yes,
had a
sorry.
son named He-Man, and he was one of the ones appointed in the temple by David to be a lead worshiper. And then He-Man, if you continue to look through the genealogy, had 17 children, and all 17 of his kids served to worship in the temple and in music. And so just looking at the genealogy and just thinking through it and thinking, Samuel was a leader and he was appointed by God, and yet his sons didn't walk with the Lord. And we don't know if Joel ended up walking with the Lord or not. We don't know his story, but we know that Samuel's grandsons did. And so just seeing the faithfulness of God through generations, and also knowing that if you have a child who's not walking with the Lord or who's walked away from the Lord, it doesn't mean God's done writing their story. And if you have a father who is not walking with the Lord or did not walk with the Lord, that doesn't set in stone your story either, that God works in spite of who we are and not because of it.
Yeah, it is interesting in these last two or three chapters that we see 2 men who are aging and how their sons have gone. And I think the lesson for us is that each of the men, they're different. One was evil and complicit in the sin and didn't really lead his sons well, and his sons spiraled out. And one who's a godly man and who had upright character, and his sons also spiraled out. And so the lesson is not so don't worry about it, do whatever you want. That's not the lesson. The lesson, I think, is for our hearts to know that God is the one who's in control of the ways in which he's moving in the hearts of our children. And we have a responsibility to do what we know to do to point them to who God is, and he's the one who ultimately works out those things in them.
Praise God for that.
Yeah.
I want to ask one question that I had yesterday that popped up in my head. These people of Israel, they are asking for a king. A king is what's right in their eyes. They have their reasons why. They're asking, they're persevering. They've been told all the king is going to do, and yet they still say, nope, this is what we want. How can we square that with what Jesus says in the New Testament, that we should persevere in prayer? We should be like a persistent widow. One reading could be like, well, that's what the people are doing. They're being persistent. They're knocking over and over again on that door. They're asking for the same thing over and over again, and God gives in a way. How do we square those two things together?
I think that maybe the difference is that the people demanded something from God. The persistent widow kept going and requesting and requesting. And I don't know that she was demanding anything from the judge, but she kept going and asking. And whereas the people demanded it and then moved in direction to do that. I mean, even their response to Samuel saying that you're old and that your sons don't walk in your ways, like it's almost like they were using that as ammunition of, Samuel, you've failed as a leader, and so give us what we want. And so it seems like they were trying to build an argument or a case for what they wanted and demanding from God, rather than requesting and saying, Lord, this is what we want. Would you work this out for us? It was, this is what we want. Now give it to us. And if not, we're going to manipulate things so that we can get what we want.
Yeah, something we haven't touched on a whole lot. This isn't answering your question, but it came to mind. Something we haven't touched on a whole lot. God says to Samuel, hey, this isn't about you. They're rejecting me. But I don't know that any of us would be in Samuel's shoes and hear that and be like, oh, okay, that makes me feel better. I think we all would take it personally still, because they say to Samuel, who is acting like a judge, give us a king to judge us. You're not that person anymore. You're old, and your sons are failures.
You've peaked a while ago.
Your time is up. How would you not take that personally? And so I think that is helpful for us to remember that when people are shaming us because of the good name of God, the shame is not toward us, but it's toward God. And we see that here. God says they're not rejecting you. This isn't about you. This is about me. And that's hard to remember in the moment because it is painful. It's hurtful.
I think it's also a picture often of when people are in positions of leadership, there's not always a lot of grace given to them. And so when people mess up, they expect and want a lot of grace from others and want opportunity to grow. But when leaders mess up, there's often just this demand of, you screwed up, and there's not grace. So, you're not judging us correctly. Your sons are out of control, and you're old. And so it stood out to me that a lot of the times in positions of leadership, there's a lot of demands and not a lot of grace. And so, and again, we just see with Samuel a real humility. Like, he went to the Lord. He didn't defend himself. He went to the Lord. He removed his sons. He did what was right. And he, I guess, received the grace from God that the people were not necessarily giving him.
We've talked about this before. To get at your question, Eric, when we come to the Lord just consistently with humble hearts, I think that's like the key word there, like in humility, we see him reshaping our hearts and like kind of working through just our coming toward him, and just how he's just moving through our prayers, and not just in like the result and the answer, but just through our hearts as we come before him.
Yeah, which we do not see happening here in the Israelites in chapter 8 here. So God invites us to pray about the same thing over and over and over and over again. We can confidently say that. But maybe a way to put it is the people, the Israelites, have their fists closed around getting a king, whereas Jesus would invite us to pray with open hands, still pray boldly over and over and over again, but still trusting in God rather than the thing that we're wanting to get.
Yeah.
Wow.
There we are.
How about that?
Did you wake up yet?
No, I'm
still
still trying. I can feel it behind my eyes. It's not even all that early.
Eric, you're old, and your sons are wayward. We want a king.
I can go one of two ways, right? I want to ask my last question. Do you want to know what it is?
I don't know, because you've forgotten like the last 3 or 4 weeks, and so maybe it's new. Maybe it's something different this time.
Maybe it's a good intro question.
What could happen is maybe I'll think it's the same question, but it's actually a new question I won't even notice.
Yeah.
That'd be
You are
troublesome.
losing your mind.
Thank you. I am. Cassie would say the same thing.
Yeah.
Here's my question. What do we see here in chapter 8 about God's glory? What things in here raise their affections for a good God?
I think I just really simply, this is a zoomed way out. It's stories like these, and we've seen several over the last couple of weeks. It's preparing us for something way better, the reader for something way better. As you read through this, you think, man, everything is going horribly. What is happening? They're asking for a king now. This is not going to go well. But I think as we zoom way out, we are able to see, no, God is preparing them and also us, the reader, to see what's actually going to fulfill those desires. And it's a king. And he had this planned all along. And that king is Jesus. So I think that as we zoom out, and maybe it's because I'm outlining and organizing all of the sermons and the way they're going, as that's constantly in my mind, that all of this is preparing us to see that.
It's going somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, there's some grace and understanding that when I do desire something that God's not giving, or I get frustrated about something that God's not giving, there is a piece of that is just human nature. And you said yesterday, Vince, that humans have always wanted what we do not perceive God as giving us. And it goes all the way back to the garden, that Eve desired something that she perceived God was not giving her. And so then she succumbed to temptation and ruined all of humanity. So there's that.
So don't do that.
But there is a piece that it's just something that we all are going to have to battle for the rest of our lives, because it is human nature, it is sinful nature to desire those things and to not be completely fulfilled by God. And yet God is patient with that and understanding, and he does he's patient and kind with the intent of leading us to repentance. And so, it's discouraging to know that will be our plight for the rest of our lives, and yet never will God get to a point that he'll throw his hands up in the air and say, fine, just forget it. He doesn't react out of frustration. He's kind.
And even that is preparing us for what we desperately need. Even it gives us a longing for something greater than what we experience here.
And I think sometimes, a good question to ask when you're longing for something that God's not fulfilling, what greater longing could God be filling in you? What greater longing could God be putting on your heart? And so, again, just pointing it all to eternity and saying, God, what is it here on earth that is not filling me that I know one day will be filled in you? And so just constantly having that mindset to look forward and think through that all of these longings will one day be fulfilled, and thanking God for that, and knowing that the emptiness that we feel is because really we're not with God right now.
I think it's just that nothing is better than what God has freely given us now. Whatever I demand or just desire, pales in comparison to what is really for my good in the eyes of the Lord. And I never answered the question earlier about the thing I'm demanding right now, so I'll answer it now. But I feel like it ties in well, because I've been sitting in a season of feeling pretty discontent all around. But a lot of what I feel like I'm demanding is relationship, and not just dating, but I think depth in certain friendships, because it goes deeper than that. I think there's just a sense of loneliness and insecurity that's been rising up too. But knowing that the people God has placed in my life right now, and just my access to him that I have, is so much sweeter than what I'm trying to seek out in other relationship and look for in other places. So again, just ties back to the things that the Lord has freely given are so much better than what I can be demanding right now. Even if I think that's going to satisfy those longings, ultimately it's not going to.
Yeah, that's good. I think what strikes me is what we talked about earlier. This is God's not surprised by the people demanding a king. He's not caught off guard. He's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. He doesn't lash out at the people out of wrath. He could have. I mean, this is a ridiculous request. They're rejecting their God. He doesn't do that. It's not plan B that he now goes with, but this is all a part of God's plan A for ultimately the good of the people, because of what's going to be coming out of the line of the kings, culminating in Jesus, which is crazy to me that he uses the brokenness of the people and their bent desires to still accomplish what he, from eternity past, determined to accomplish.
When it's not ultimately just for the good of the people, but it's actually for God's glory.
Yeah.
And God's glory will always be for our good, even when it doesn't feel good.
Which is insane also.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't have to be that way. God could say, I'm going to get the glory and it's going to be really rough for all the people, but that's just how it's going to be. But he married those two together. This is a good God that we serve. Even if we don't understand everything, and we don't, it's a God that we can trust because this is his character. We see it over and over and over.
The end.
The end.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for listening. Next week, I didn't look.
9 and 10.
It's 9 and 10.
9 and 10.
First Samuel 9 and 10 this next week. So please do read ahead. Thanks for listening. Have a great week. We love you.
Adios.
Bye.